So today I want to talk to you about negotiation, right? If you want to be a successful entrepreneur or just generally successful in life, then one of the skills you are going to have to embrace is the ability to negotiate, right? So let's start by asking the very simple question, what is negotiation, right? Now, in its simplest form, it's about trying to reach an agreement, and that could be anything from haggling over the price of your new house to sorting out who's going to be the nominated driver on a night out, right? Negotiation is actually something that many of us do without even noticing it, right? We try to get into a position that suits us best by perhaps moving somebody else's position. That is negotiation in its simplest form, right? So ask yourself the question, do you like to negotiate? Yep. If you've answered yes, then great. You'll probably already be pretty good at it, right? But if you don't, then you might have stumbled across something that's holding you back, even if you hadn't noticed it, right? Now, I'm always up for a bit of negotiation, right? It's a sign that we're getting close to a deal. And to be honest, if people don't want to negotiate, it's possibly a sign that I haven't pushed hard enough in the first place. So always worth considering that, okay? Now, first thing I would say about negotiation, right, is that you have to have a really clear idea of where you want to end up or where you are happy to end up, okay? Now, if I think about this, if I use an example of you want to sell your old car, right? You advertise it for 10 grand, but you've got no idea what it's worth and you haven't got any idea of what sort of figure that you would accept, right? So if someone comes along, has a look and says, oh, I'll offer you 5 grand for it, then what do you do now, right? Maybe you just say no. After all, it's only half what you're asking for, right? Or the next thing you would want to do is make a counter offer, right? The trouble is, though, if you haven't got a clue what you actually want, or you panic, you might end up thinking the lowest offer you'll take is 8 grand or 7 grand or 6 grand, right? And you'll just end up somewhere in the middle. Now, the person you are negotiating with is now rubbing their hands because they just knocked 4, 3, 2 grand. And they might not have even known, they were just putting a cheeky offer in, right? All they are trying to do is negotiate somewhere away from your original asking price, right? So the number one rule in negotiation is have a clear idea of where you want to end up, right? Otherwise, you're going to end up closer to where the other person wants to be, right? Rule number 2 is I want you to think about what you are prepared to give up, what you're prepared to sacrifice in order to strike a deal, right? It doesn't just have to be the financial implications. Now, it's really important to understand, actually, the financial implications aren't the only thing. So if you go back to that car, right? Imagine that you've obeyed rule number 1 and you know that you're starting off at 10, but the lowest price you're prepared to go to is 9, right? 9 grand, brilliant. Now, if you think about rule number 2, think about what conditions that you're putting on the deal, right? So, for example, your minimum price is 9 grand, subject to that buyer paying cash and being able to complete the deal by the weekend, right? Now, you need to let the buyer know what your conditions are at the same time as you talk about the price. So, for example, when they make their offer and you come back and at 9,000, you might say, I'll accept 9,200, but you need to pay for it in full with cash, collection by the weekend. Actually, if you're able to do them two, I'll maybe take 9, right? Now, being clear on the price and the conditions means that you've given the buyer the opportunity to achieve what they want, provided that they fulfill your conditions, right? Life always isn't that easy though, right? So you think you've got the making of a good deal, but the other person still won't agree. So what do you do next, right? This is my rule number 3. Understand the value of concession, right? Now, concessions are things that you are going to use to help you get the deal over the line, right? So back to the car example, right? I've asked for 2 conditions to be met. I want cash and I want collection by the weekend, right? At the moment, I don't know if either of those are achievable for the buyer, but the chances are for that buyer, one of the conditions might be easier to meet than the other one, right? So the important thing to do at this stage is to have that discussion and find out which of these are the most valuable to them. And if you were to change one of the conditions, which one would help them out the most, right? and which one of those would help you get the deal closed, because that's what we're working towards closing that deal, right? So you might say, right, okay, so I can agree on the price of £9,000 for cash payment and collection by the weekend, but if I could do anything to make it easier for you, which would it be? Hang on to the car for a few more days, or do you need me to take part cash, part electronic transfer? Yeah? Now, we sometimes call this the conditional clause, right? Now, it's a conditional phrase. It's a conditional clause because you're using that phrase, if I could, right? So I'm not promising. I'm just suggesting how I might be able to change things around to help make this feasible. Now, if the buyer's struggling to get the car collected by the weekend, then the offer of keeping it for a few more days is going to really appeal to them. If they're struggling to get to the bank and withdraw all of the cash, then maybe the offer of the part electronic payment is going to be what helps them, right? What I've done is I've given them the choice to choose which of those is the most valuable to them, okay? So you've got to remember, negotiation is all about reaching an agreement that's acceptable for you and also acceptable for the other party, right? In a good negotiation, both sides are going to come away feeling like they've won, right? One might be happier than the other, but neither is going to feel hard done by. And that can be really important if you hope to do more business with that person in future, right? So remember the 3 golden rules, okay? Number 1, always know where you are happy to end up when you start the negotiation, right? Number 2, be really clear on the conditions that you want to apply to the deal. And then number 3, understand the value of any concessions that you make and use the ones that the other person is going to find the most valuable to them, right? If you apply these rules, you will find negotiating a lot easier, better for both parties, and actually could be what you find is better for business.